how do we know that Jarvis is doing a good job, right? And how do you know that it's actually like putting together the robot in the right way as it's helping you, build the Iron Man suit or fix something very specific. It would have to have behind the scenes a whole lot of specialized agents for each of those jobs. Like fix the car agent and fix the robotic arm agent, based on the schematics and pull that data in and be able to, then use certain kinds of tools to be able to scan things and, recommend the plan to fix something, right? So, but oh my God, how do we know that it's going to be the right thing?
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenka, and this is episode number 183. So, this episode is going to focus on AI agents, which has been at the center of a lot of the discussion of the AI industry lately. AI agents are rapidly evolving, offering new ways to automate tasks, interact with data, and assist humans beyond what traditional AI tools can do. In this episode, we break down what AI agents really are, how they differ from general-purpose models like ChatGPT, and why narrow, task-specific agents often outperform broader tools in real-world applications. We dive into what it takes to build and deploy an effective AI agent, including the importance of contextual data, specialized models, and how these agents can be used to search the web, interact with platforms like LinkedIn or Instagram, and even coordinate as a team. We also explore Agent.AI's approach to no-code agent creation, the potential of these tools to augment, not replace, human work, and what the next wave of productivity might look like when AI becomes more embedded in everyday processes. Whether you're just curious or already experimenting, this conversation offers a clear and grounded take on the future of agent-based AI systems. My guest today to talk about this is Andrei Oprisan, who is a technology leader with over 15 years of experience in software engineering, specializing in product development, machine learning, and scaling high-performance teams. He co-founded OneScreen.AI and has held senior leadership roles at Wayfair, Liberty Mutual, and HubSpot, contributing to business growth through innovative tech solutions. Andrei is currently pursuing an MBA from MIT Sloan and holds a master's in computer science from Columbia. He is now working with Agent.AI to leverage AI for enhanced customer service solutions.
Hi there, Andrei. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today to talk about AI agents, which, as we mentioned right before the recording, is genuinely something that I've wanted to talk about on the podcast as a kind of a focal theme for a couple of months now. It just keeps coming up in conversations on and off the podcast. So it's great to have you on here today to educate us a little bit about what these crazy things can do and what they will be able to do in the future. So thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be here and happy to share my thoughts.
Yeah. So maybe before we jump into everything, what made you get interested into working with and on AI agents?
Yeah, so it was a conversation that Dharmesh Shah, the co-founder and CTO of HubSpot, and I had around AI and the evolution and these things that were emerging last year back in April, called AI agents. No one really knew, what they were. The definition was sort of still fairly fluid. But he asked me essentially if I wanted to go on this journey with him to build out a community for AI agents, for essentially to democratize access to AI agents, and for builders as well to make it easier to build these things without having to be a coder. And someone like myself who is classically machine learning trained and has done some research and has led large engineering teams, said, okay, that's interesting. I do believe AI is only going to accelerate. It's only going to become more part of our daily lives. and we need to make it easier to understand, easier to access, safer. And you can't really do those things without making it more approachable for everybody. You sure need, a graduate degree in machine learning to build an AI agent. And with Agent.ai, you don't have to, right? But if you want to build super advanced agents, obviously you're going to need some level of technical skills that you can acquire over time. But again, you're not going to need a computer science degree and a decade plus of experience. Maybe a few weeks of playing around and reading and learning by yourself is really all you need these days to at least be able to build things on your own. And then from there, it's really just about your creativity. And just like we've seen with apps and the app ecosystem with the first iPhones, that took some time. The first versions sure were harder to essentially build those apps, but today you can build them much more simply. And there's a lot of no-code tools that can help you do that. And Agent.ai is that no-code builder platform on the builder side, where you can build agents again by just clicking the actions that you want and dragging some things around. And if you're a user, you don't need to be technical at all. You're just signing up. It's free. You get a bunch of credits, and you get to play around and use any one of the agents that sound interesting, from LinkedIn resume optimizers to prospect list generators, down to blog writing tools and many hundreds of other types of use cases.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I used my first agent, and it completely failed about a year and a half ago, maybe something like that. And I can't remember the name of it, but it was one of these just web-based tools where you just give it, like I gave it a simple task, like research whatever it was, and it had kind of the open, I don't know the term, but the open brain, right? You could see what it's thinking. And I just remember keep seeing like failed, tried something else, failed, tried something else, failed. But that was like a year and a half ago. And I think that anybody listening to the podcast for any amount of time knows how fast tech can change. So I mean, I definitely want to talk about the democratization of these tools and kind of how ecosystems will be built about in the future. But could you maybe touch on how effective these things are now, right? So I think ChatGPT Premium is releasing, or sorry, has released and is now rolling out its kind of AI agent. I believe it's called Tasks, right? So there's clearly more interest and awareness of these things, but how good are they, I guess, is the simple question for you today.
Right. But I think the answer, unfortunately, is always it depends, right? It depends on, what is it you're trying to do? What kind of data do you have? And also how narrow is it? What we're seeing today, the most effective agents in our marketplace, for example, where we have data, we can back this up. The more narrow, the more specialist the agent, the better the reviews, right? So essentially, the fewer things you do, not the broader sort of set of use cases, but the more narrow you are, the more specific you are with the prompts that you give these large language models, more specific with the kind of data and context you're really providing. Let's say with file uploads and saying that what, limit your knowledge only to what I'm uploading. Right? Let's talk about me. Here's my resume. Here's my book. Here's, a paper or a book that I'm going to need you to help me edit, right? That is going to work a lot better than just say, I'm writing a book. Okay. What topic, what kind of parameters, do you have a draft or an outline? So again, the more constrained it is, it gives the LLM the opportunity to frankly hallucinate less. And hallucination in the LLM world is a feature. It's not a bug, and it's not something that can go away. Hallucination is basically just, as it sounds, it's just making things up. It's going to sound very convincing because the job of a language model is to sound convincing. Whether it's wrong, whether it's right, it's going to make it plausible. If you tell it that, hey, the sky is always purple instead of blue, or instead of based on the time of day, etc. And if you give it that kind of prompt as a system prompt for an LLM, it's going to say, nope, that's the ground truth. Now, convince me that it's purple, it's always been purple, it's always going to be purple. those kinds of things. It's going to figure out how might I convince you, how might I answer. If our goal was to do this, then how could I do it based on your instructions? So again, it's going to make things up. There are a bunch of different methods to fine tune these models to bring in, very large corpus of data. Let's say if you're a corporation, if you're an enterprise, you have your own policies and your way of doing things. Your definition of what certain metrics mean to your organization, or your way of doing marketing, because your brand identity looks like this. This is how we're going to talk about our customers and what we can offer and our values, right? And you want maybe an LLM or an agent that is powered by an LLM to reflect that. You're going to need to be able to, provide a whole lot of context, and just the right context at the right time. So as part of this, at Agent.ai, we're building all these tools that are no code type tools that are easy to use, where again, you don't need to build your own version, you don't need to host it yourself, you don't need to worry about the compliance and security. We just provide all of it and make it super easy to say, here's my data, let's tailor it. Here's my knowledge base. Let's tailor now all these agents to my context, to what I care about, to what we have as our definition of the ground truth. And then let's focus on creating value. That's not, you don't want to focus on all this technical detail. How do you even pick the right agent model, right? There's companies like OpenAI that everybody probably knows because of ChatGPT, and it has a slew of models. Well, which model should you actually be using? Is it 4.0, which is kind of the default for users? Is it the 4.0 mini, which is much faster? That's not as good, but again, for certain tasks like extracting data, it's very, very good. If it's 10 times cheaper and it's 3 times faster, you're going to want to use that, at scale for certain kinds of jobs, versus if you want to get any real deep thinking, there's a O1 sort of thinking class of agents that actually show you their thinking, show you their step-by-step thinking. And based off of that, you can actually tweak it. You can say, you know what, assumption number 3 and 5 were wrong. Let's actually use these kinds of metrics or these kinds of numbers, when we're trying to figure this out. So again, it really depends on the use case. And then you've got multiple vendors. They have different approaches. They have different underlying data that they train their agents on, which they're not very transparent about, right? So again, I think the challenge here is that these models change, and new ones come out every day. It's hard to tell which ones to really use. How do you even access them at scale? And at Agent.ai, we're aiming to make all of that more accessible. That's what the democratization means to us. You're going to have a slew of 15 different agents, of different models that you can use for agents, and we'll give you a blurb as well, when to kind of use this one versus the other one. But they're all up there for you to at least play with and try them out and see which one actually gives you better results. For coding, Claude is generally seen as better than some of the OpenAI models, right? So again, I think it just depends on the specific use cases. Versus for analysis, yes, the OpenAI models are better, but if you want to give it a lot of data, which is measured in tokens, you want to give it hundreds or thousands of pages equivalent of data, then you can't do that with OpenAI. You would have to use something like Google's Gemini family of models. So again, we give you all those different models and help you automatically just pick the one that makes sense, or just leave it on auto and we'll figure it out based on sort of the use case that you have.
Oh, great. Well, maybe we should touch a little bit on the use cases exactly, right? So if there's somebody listening to this podcast or just thinking about, well, what can an AI agent do for the first time and they've never interacted with these things before, but they have done ChatGPT, or they've used ChatGPT, so they understand, how that phenomenal tool works. What are, say, the differences between ChatGPT and some of these agents, right? So like my understanding is that they interact with the world more so than ChatGPT, and maybe you could elaborate upon that for us about the different kind of use cases that these agents can actually support the people that are using them.
Right. So at its very core, AI agents are applications. It's a piece of software where we're using LLMs and tools together to get something accomplished. So again, in the ChatGPT example, the very first versions, all you could do is actually just chat with it. It doesn't have any tools that are available. In the current version, there's some tools available. There is the search tool, the actual web search. So in the 4.0 models, it's not available for the O1 or the O1 Pro. But in the 4.0 model, for example, you can enable the search, which is then powered by Bing. And what the agent does behind the scenes, it takes your chat prompt and says, hey, let's look up, what are the competitors that's a HubSpot, right? It may have some of that data and the LLM because it's already trained on all the entire internet, essentially, every public website, all the works of writing of our entire human species and so on. Everything's already been sort of embedded in the model. So it's going to have some cutoff date in terms of that knowledge. The model was built and trained and then published on a specific date. And if you ask it, it'll tell you, or you can look up sort of what the published data cutoff dates are. It's likely 6 to 12 months before. So, it only has knowledge up to a certain point. It doesn't know who the current president is, for example, right?
Right.
You would have to maybe have that kind of Google search or Bing search available and say, yep, based on your query, let me look up this information. Oh, I found authoritative answers on this based on, again, some algorithms that it employs to say, yep, I'm going to look at these kinds of sites and not these other kinds of sites, which again, a Bing result or Google search result is going to give you just by virtue of what is number one versus 2 versus 3. And then it brings that data as the context to this LLM to then answer the question. So again, you're typing that question, you're asking maybe, who are HubSpot's competitors, is going to do the Bing search, is going to bring in the result, is going to actually get those web pages and their content all together behind the scenes and say, hey, LLM, hey, OpenAI model 4.0, answer this question, who are HubSpot's competitors? And here's your universe of knowledge. These pages that I've crawled, that I got from the internet with these timestamps, summarize those pages. And based on this information, now tell me succinctly, who are the main competitors? And that's it. Now, you could have a follow-up question to say, great, now give me a pros and cons list, right? And a features, features table and pricing as well, right? And then it might do some additional Google searching to get maybe the pricing pages and then extract that information and give you some kind of answer. It maintains that continuous sort of state is what we call it from the previous sets of conversations within just that chat itself. You can always start a new chat where it's going to not know anything about, let's say, the HubSpot data that we just Google search or Bing search. But within a specific chat thread that you started, it's going to have the previous context so you can more easily use that data to answer your future questions and be able to maybe improve it if you say, hey, that wasn't quite what I was looking for. Give me a more succinct or more analytical answer, and always, show me your work and show me your sources. Cite your sources, because I really want to make sure that this is based on facts. And again, limiting some of that hallucination, which you always have to watch out for. So again, agentic AI, at the end of the day, it's about using LLMs and using tools to accomplish something. And in the chat context, and on the ChatGPT example, the goal is to answer whatever question you gave, right? And it's going to use the LLM, it's going to use the tools. In the agentic AI world, you can have many tools being used all at the same time. For example, when you build an agent on Agent.ai, we have what are called smart actions, and you could do something like, yes, let's get some user prompt that we want to answer, but then based on that, let's maybe get someone's LinkedIn profile or someone's Instagram profile, or do a Google search, and then bring all that information together to, sell better to them. And your agent could look like, something like where you're asking, hey, what are you trying to sell if you're building an agent to help you sell a product to someone, right? So maybe it's as simple as just two input fields. What are you trying to sell? What is a product? Just a brief description. And then who are you trying to sell it to? Maybe just their LinkedIn, profile URL, to then be able to write up some personalized message to them, an outreach email or in message or right. And so in that example, you would drag and drop two of those input fields. Again, in a chat GPT world, it's just the chat box, but where you can build your own chat boxes, with Agent.ai. And then we would do something like, great, now let's get that LinkedIn URL. Let's look up their profile information. Let's bring all the data in. We store it in something called a variable. That's just a reference point that you can use and drop into a prompt. We may also then ask the LLM to do some research on a specific company. So whatever the product they're trying to sell, maybe based on the company name or the domain or the brief description, you can write a prompt that's something like, hey, LLM, write a convincing sales pitch that is tailored to this person's LinkedIn profile to sell them this product. And you can then insert, here's the LinkedIn profile data, here's my product data, right into this like text field. Now show the user, what you came up with. And what I just talked about will literally take you 2 minutes to put together. It's those two different input fields. You're adding a LinkedIn profile lookup call, you're adding an LLM call, and then you're showing the user something. Now show me the result. That's basically it. That is a very, very sort of tailored AI agent that it does just, very few things, right? It gets someone's LinkedIn profile data and it does some research on a product. And then it just shows the user the results. So that's a very narrow, low agency type of agent versus, something more open-ended with ChatGPT, where it's quite literally just a chat box with potential big search enabled. That's a very high agency agent, and every agent is somewhere on that spectrum. And again, the more narrow it is, then the more likely you are to be able to benchmark and sort of grade, how well is it doing? Because if it's literally just an open chat box, how could you even quantify, the way that it got competitor research back, right? But if you establish a ground truth and a framework for that analysis and use only certain kinds of tools, then you can say, well, here's 10,000 good examples. And you could essentially have another agent that's just grading those results and have it improve itself based on, what were good answers, maybe based on good reviews of that agent, what were bad answers based on someone's really getting frustrated and asking a lot of follow-up questions or, low ratings or sorts of feedback like that. And that's essentially the sort of the structure of these agentic AI systems and how, you can put them together to get something done. But also, I think the biggest component to all this is just the degree of agency and how many additional tools do they have access to, and that includes access to data systems, right? And how do you plug into personal data or enterprise data to again really tailor what that LLM knows in terms of its known universal knowledge.
Okay, so in my understanding of this, to me, it sounds like these agents are still really good at, or better, I should say, at accumulating some data and understanding it at a more tailored level for whatever the use case is. Maybe this is kind of like the next question here is like to the future. But a lot of the guests that I've had on have talked about agents as interactive agents, right? Interactive characters, if you will, that are able to, I guess the simplest way to describe it is like they're able to go online on the internet somewhere and click a button and actually create an action, right? And I think that is the thing that I've gotten a lot of feedback on, where people are excited about this what is it called, the agentic age, where you're able to have your army of agents interact with the world beyond the kind of research or the customization of understanding based on the data that you're giving them. So the question then with that context is that possible now, or do we still have to wait a little bit? Like my first experience with the agent that just failed at everything. It couldn't even do a freaking Google search a year and a half. Um, are we in the age where these agents are able to interact with the world, or is it still a couple steps away, should I say?
Right. Right. Again, I think it depends on, what that world needs to look like or what success looks like to you. Right. I think there's more and more agents that have more access to more tools, and being able to integrate with third-party systems like CRMs and
Hmm.
points of sale systems. Obviously, Google searching is very, very much possible now, and bringing in data from all sorts of search engines, and that includes, searching across large databases and large internal document storage system. And yes, I think now you can start to see more agency, right? More ability to do some of those things like executing some kind of action by
Hmm.
itself. It doesn't mean it's a good idea, right? It doesn't mean that it's quite ready for that. I would again, I would caution to say that the more narrow the agent, the more I'm inclined to say that yes,
Mm.
it could do a good job, right? It can do a very good job if that agent's only job is to look at my LinkedIn profile and activity and come up with a um, daily post for me that's on specific topics. I get to review it before it gets published,
Hmm.
but you could have it auto-publish as well. Again,
Hmm.
that agency doesn't diminish is not diminished by the fact that you're having a human in the loop, right? But it does some kind of work by itself, and then it can queue it up, for you to review it and to do something else with. Um, what we're really working on now, and what I think is the next frontier,
Hmm.
is the coordination of agents. And part of what we're also working on at Agent.ai is the ability to essentially create a team of agents.
Hmm.
Because when you're trying to accomplish a goal, for a human being, we have fairly amorphous goals. They're not extremely specific. Oh, I want you to only look at my LinkedIn and only on these specific topics come up with a post to to get drafted for me. I want you to be my social media manager. I want you to
Hmm.
actually, look at all my channels, right? So X, LinkedIn, maybe Instagram, etc. Look at all of them, especially let's say you're a business and you want a social media manager. What that would mean behind the scenes is that you would need a whole team of agents to do things like
Hmm.
very specific things for every channel, right? Like reviewing the activity, and actually looking at your competitors, right? Who are your competitors? What field are you playing in? Right. So for each of those channels, get the competitor information, look at the topics and trends that you care about, do that research, look at your data on a daily basis, do that research, come up with some drafts, be able to publish them, keep track of, which post did well, better or worse based on the topic, based on the kinds of keywords, etc. Should we change a strategy?
Hmm.
What is
Hmm.
our content strategy, and should we stick to it if we're seeing sort of plummeting views, right? Or draft some different things, should be A/B testing these kinds of things. What I just described is probably a crew of 10 to 15 different agents, each of them doing a very specialized job,
Hmm.
but bringing it together, say, great, we just have we have a bigger job to do, but yes, I'm going to divvy up tasks. I'm going to keep track of and judge essentially how each one is doing. Be able to say, okay, bad agent over there, you didn't quite do a good job at writing that post on LinkedIn. Great job, this other agent, writing that post on X, and it got more visibility. Now, was it because that agent did a worse job than the other one? Or
Hmm.
is it because there's different kinds of channels with different mechanics, right? And so on. And maybe my budget was different across channels, which again, in a real world scenario, that is likely going to be the case. There are different costs per click and per impression,
Hmm.
and it's like different ways of kind of looking at some of those metrics. And so again, it gets complicated very quickly, and that's why the more narrow the job that the agent does, then the easier it is going to be to then coordinate them and be able to measure them and be able to say, okay, we can understand when to use a specific kind of agent, how it's going to do, how we're going to know that it's doing a good job, what does success look like essentially for each of these agents, and then how do we keep track of that and change our coordination and orchestration strategy, right, over time. How do we know again that to need to be the case, versus doing something one time? Again, that's a very simple agent, but if you want someone to maybe do something for you on a daily basis, what would that even need to look like, to be fully automated with AI agents with agency? And again, that is interesting. That's part of where I think we're going very quickly. But again, they're still just software tools. At the end of the day, they're very finite. LLMs are only trained on a certain amount of data. They only approximate human reasoning. There is no creative thinking mathematically, or we can sort of prove that. It's going to give you a convincing answer. It's going to give you likely the right answer, but it's the right approximation of an answer. It's like a statistical, approximation of like what should the theoretical good answer or set of answers look like, and now then give me like the most likely one, given what I just gave you, right? And that's basically it. So again, it's hard to really to answer that question with some real foresight, but I think and what we've seen from the data so far is that the more specific and more concrete those agents are, the better they're going to behave, and the more likely their users are to get what they wanted out of them.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And I guess just kind of a follow-up point here from the question. One of the things that I'm sure you're experiencing it as well. You go on social media, and the Gartner hype cycle. I can't remember the exact terms, but we're definitely in like a new hype cycle for agentic AI, right? And there's all this discussion of what is it? Tony Stark's Jarvis AI is only a couple of years away, right? And I think that's getting people really excited because, like for instance, I've talked about this on the podcast a number of times. Like I started a business here, and I've got, a number of different employees, and if I can get, some of those employees to use an agent, then they're kind of like, managing a little Jarvis, and then the productivity and, the value that we can give our clients can increase exponentially. And I think that has captured the attention and imagination of so many people across the world for positive and good. There's all this technological unemployment, labor issues that are going to come out, but if I understand you correctly, we're still a little bit of a ways away from having the singular Jarvis AI agent type that's able to do many different things. It seems like there has to be a bit of an army created of these AI agents to do something that, who knows, 10 years away, 5 years away, 15 years away, one of these, what do we want to call it? A super agent would be able to do
Right.
that kind of work.
Right. I think we're, from again, to kind of break it down a little bit, I think the voice components, we're certainly there from that perspective. You can have a real time, essentially a very low latency kind of conversation with a simulated voice, even your own voice. You can quite clone it, and with 10 seconds worth of audio, and then you're talking with yourself, or someone is talking as you, and answering questions, let's say, as you. And the challenge is that these agents do have access to tools, yes, and there's an increasing set of tools, whether it's all your data in your Gmail and calendars, down to whatever databases and files and so on. Okay, so you have access to that data. You can pluck the right sort of context, and again, that's not a trivial thing, but we've sort of solved that at scale. We can say, okay, we can bring in just the right amount of information to be able to answer that question. The challenge again now is in really how do we know that Jarvis is doing a good job, right? And how do you know that it's actually like putting together the robot in the right way as it's helping you, build the Iron Man suit, or fix something very specific. It would have to have behind the scenes a whole lot of specialized agents for each of those jobs, like fix the car agent and fix the robotic arm agent, based on the schematics, and pull that data in and be able to, then use certain kinds of tools to be able to scan things and, recommend a plan to fix something, right? So again, we have the building blocks to kind of put a lot of this together. But the biggest missing piece is that the actual assessment part of, great, maybe it's going to put something together or it's going to recommend some things, but oh my God, how do we know that it's going to be the right thing and it's going to improve over time based on the specific work that it did, right? Based on like, oh, I fixed a robot arm, but you know what? After 1 hour, it just broke again. Okay, how do we prevent that from happening? That's the biggest missing piece right now. And again, it's a feature, not a bug of the current generation of these models, these large language models, where they hallucinate and they can make things up, and we can ground them in a whole bunch of data. Like, here's the definition of what this robot arm needs to look like, and all the schematics, and different ways of kind of fixing it. Now let's figure out, how do we screw back on in there so that it works again. It might be able to do that, but again, I think that the more complex the tasks are, maybe putting, is it at 3 screws, is it at 10 screws, and some kind of socket or something that broke in a way that wasn't previously documented, where again, these LLMs can't really exhibit creative thinking. It'll try to decompose the problem. It'll try to come up with plausible scenarios, but we need a new generation of algorithms to be able to really have this creative thinking, but also the creative, analysis of what it did. And again, we're seeing some evolution with some of the latest models, just literally in the last 6 weeks here, with O1 from ChatGPT. That is this thinking model that is showing you how it's thinking, but you can't correct specific steps, for example, right? You can't say, okay, or you can't have it assess itself and say, how confident are you that, step 1 is the right one, and then step 2 is the right one? Is it, decreasing? Is it increasing? Is it, let's change those assumptions and like really control that thinking. There's no way to really control that thinking today without, again, doing a lot of very heavy lifting post fact from an engineering standpoint. It's not something where you can say, let's do this super simply after the model's been built. So again, you can have a lot of very specialized models that can do a very good job at specific tasks, but that is very expensive and hard to do for, n number of like a Jarvis, right? But again, you could maybe like spend a few $1,000,000 and have your own Jarvis that can do just a few things well. But again, not to the level where, you could have it do, all sorts of things. And it's certainly in an open-ended way, in a way that can be self-critical and it's self-improving over time, or even improving based on your feedback. It's very hard to do beyond just, a very limited data set.
Really, really good to know. I love actually these hype cycles because it draws in a lot of interest. But obviously there's a lot of, I don't know if it's, yeah. I don't want to use a term like misinformation or anything like that, but there's maybe ideas ahead of their time, shall we say. So that's really good to know. For the AI agents that are out there today, and maybe, I see that the time's winding down here a little bit. Maybe we can shift a little bit into kind of the later section of the podcast, which is talking about the future. So maybe in the next couple of years, what do you think are going to be the industries that are going to be impacted the most? Like, we don't have to reach a Jarvis-level AI agents, but some of these more specific ones that you're talking about, do you think that they'll be employed or deployed? I don't know the right term there, for specific industries before other ones. Like, I can assume steel manufacturing is probably not going to use an AI agent anytime soon, but something else might.
Right. No, I think a lot of knowledge work is going to be impacted by this kind of agentic AI. I think in particular, industries that are very process oriented are going to be more impacted, because it's more readily possible to describe those processes, and then to be able to do or approximate much of that work. For example, work in maybe finance and in compliance and in, even things like accounting, right? I think once we have the right data processing in place, which again, we're not 100% there. Like I wouldn't trust an AI agent to do my taxes and be comfortable with that, right?
You don't want it to hallucinate in that, right?
Definitely don't want, right? Like, because
Yeah.
again, the risks there are extremely high if you get it wrong. So again, I think there's going to be even within finance, like how much can we afford to get some of this wrong? And what kind of work can we farm out, to these agents? But I think we're already seeing impacts. I think, JP Morgan the last 2 years shrank their starting analyst classes by 25%. And they said, you know what,
Wow,
we're
that's
hiring literally 25% fewer people every year, and we're going to continue to decrease that because we're not going to need as many folks, because frankly, the team that they have today is getting more and more effective. How many analysts do you need to analyze, transactions and put together decks from an investment banking standpoint if you got a whole lot of really good examples and it's mostly formulaic, right? They know what they expect internally of like a really good pitch, really good analysis. Data is consistently structured from an input standpoint, and so again, for some of this work, you can get most of the way there, at least to the point where a human being still needs to do the last 20%, or tell the agent to go back and say, okay, wrong assumptions, wrong data, let's go back and try this again. But again, I think we're seeing more of that. I think in some of the places like marketing and sales, again, I think in customer service, you're seeing a lot of interest, and a lot of the startups, the AI startups that have been funded have been in these spaces because for these use cases, it is pretty, easy. I wouldn't say necessarily easy, but it's certainly, possible to measure what good looks like, right? And be able to kind of have the right heuristics in place, the right definitions of things like brand, identity, and how you should talk in all these emails, to users, and be able to have some agent drafting better emails that are personalized based on what that specific user read, they clicked on from a clickstream standpoint, and then be able to personalize it in a way that frankly wouldn't even be possible with people. Right? I mean, you wouldn't want to have personalized emails for both you and I, right? For every single website based on our web, not only our web sort of crumb trail, but also my LinkedIn and Twitter activity, right? And again, be able to do that for every single person. And there are AI companies that can do that today, right? That can literally give you those kinds of tools, both from an email copy standpoint, from a blogging standpoint, for sales, writing out those outreach emails, right, and customer service, again, like just handling the various kind of customer service use cases and getting you to that resolution much faster. I think we're seeing that increasingly, right? And I think again, probably more so customer service than the other case, especially on a B2B side, if there's larger deals and maybe more things at stake, right? Like a very large deal, you're still likely going to always have a human being sort of account manager for that versus a very low touch customer service ticket where frankly success looks like getting the person resolution as fast as possible. You know what, I can't log in, I need my accounts locked for some reason, do that identity verification with an AI agent versus I have to wait on the phone for 45 minutes, talk to a person to ask me the 3 questions you could have asked me 45 minutes ago, right, and validate it. So again, I think for some industries, this is welcome. This is going to be really good for those business outcomes. And I think in other industries, you're going to have people being augmented by AI tremendously. And again, I think it's less about which jobs we're going to eliminate or to change in different ways. I think it's about how can we be more productive using these tools. How can we reimagine the work that we're doing now that we're not bounded by the same kinds of constraints, where frankly, for a lot of human knowledge based jobs, we're doing jobs where we're constrained by these technology systems, where you were sitting in meetings, we're then maybe coming up with some analysis and some report, move it from this format to this other format, put it in the PowerPoint, write it in an email, the summary of that, have a follow-up meeting about some kind of goals that we could have documented that, we're going to then do some strategic thinking about and executing on certain, activities and define that very well. Again, a lot of that work that kind of, if you think about it purely analytically in terms of what kind of work people are actually doing, much of that work is inefficiency because of the way software was built, from like 20, 30 years ago. And then we've been using the same sort of paradigms in terms of like, no, you got to take it from this bucket and you put it in this other interface bucket, and then you put it to this other interface bucket. And then hopefully eventually you do some real work, which might be like 2 hours a day worth of actual like deep thinking, creative work, the kind of work that we all enjoy, doing. And I think these systems can help us if you can just have those various systems and those data pipes just working together and translating from one format to the other. Like, I don't need to be in the middle of that. Give me my 5 hours back, and I'd rather do more deep work than having my time spent just moving things around and sort of being busy that way and doing very low leverage work, because that is not very high leverage. That's not really creating a lot of value for yourself, for your own growth, for the organization. So again, I think it really depends on how we look at it. But I also think we need to think about these AI systems in a way that creates more value for people. Maybe creating more training opportunities. Maybe as part of using an agent, we should have the another version of every single agent that is actually explaining to you how it's thinking and how to improve based on those kinds of workflow analyses that it can do. Right. So again, I think there's ways of kind of looking at this in a way that creates more value, frankly, for everybody. I think part of it is still very messy because we haven't figured it out. It's emerging technology. It's not really established. There's a few use cases, yes, where it's obviously used at scale, and it's very good at very specific things, but it's not this sort of like doing any human job and everything is going to go away. That's not the case. And it won't be the case for a very long time. I think you're only going to have really highly specialized agents and AI systems, in the next 5 to 10 years. I think that's where we're going to see a proliferation. You're going to see a lot of very specialist things, but beyond that, you're not going to have this sort of generic AI that can really do anything before we have this, the AGI equivalent, the artificial general intelligence, which again is likely decades away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was honestly going to be my last question. Like, what do you think is going to happen over the next couple of years? I think ChatGPT came out just a little bit over 2 years ago right now. So I was going to ask you to extrapolate 2 years in the future. But if that's what you think, that's very useful to kind of have in the back of our minds. And I like this point that you're talking about, which has obviously come on the podcast kind of every time we talk about AI. So it should be highlighted, this idea of augmenting humans. It's not necessarily, I mean, I think it will be replacing people in certain situations. When exactly, we'll see. But this idea of augmenting humans, there's no way, for instance, personally, again, that I would be able to run the business that I have right now without using ChatGPT 10, 15 times a day. It's just such a crazy time saver. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like when you have these, in a couple of years, these highly specialized AI agents that are able to do specific tasks for you, give you very specific, should we say, like better understanding of, whatever it is specifically that you're looking at, and the kind of time that you can save there is going to make us, well, those of us that use AI a lot more productive and a lot more valuable than those that don't. And connected to that, also the businesses that use AI are going to be, so much higher. Yeah.
And I think part of this is there's certainly a lot of even for myself, right? There's some level of fear, there's some level of uncertainty and
Sure.
doubt. But also, working deeply in this space every day. Again, it's very early. We figure out a bunch of things, and it looks like magic. The fact that you can even have a conversation with a website, and it can do a whole bunch of things for you, and it'll likely answer a lot of things very well for you. That's because, again, it's approximating a good enough answer based on all of human knowledge that is available right at fingertips. Of course, you can do that. You can extract the right kind of knowledge and then answer your questions pretty well. But I would say, at the same time, it's improving exponentially every year. And I think we're seeing that both in terms of improvement from a capability standpoint, but also there's also other measures of improvement, such as cost and runtime, right? So if you look at, ChatGPT 2 years ago, the price and speed, both ways that you look at it, they've gotten over 1,000 times each better. So in terms of,
Crazy.
The cost per token, per essentially word that's generated out of it, it's 1,000 times cheaper now. What will it look like, 5 years from now, when it's 1,000,000 times cheaper to generate emails, to generate, web pages? Is that good or bad? And how do we, keep quality high, let's say, of the data that is out there, of the internet, of emails? Is anyone going to want to even read emails anymore because everything's so generated and hyper personalized? Maybe I would rather get personalized email than not, right? But at the same time, I think that's saturation point. And I think the other part of all this is people should experiment and play around with this technology, because it's only going to help them. Ignoring it, I don't think is a good idea. And again, we're not at a point where, every single person should be using this on a daily basis for everything that they're kind of doing. They shouldn't. It's a waste of their time. But they should at least get familiar with it. They should at least understand that, hey, you know what, this thing is coming. I should understand kind of how it works. I should try to use it for the things that I'm doing on a daily basis, and see its flaws and see what it can do. We see, get those magic moments of oh wow, that's amazing. Oh my God, that's so broken, right? 2 years ago, you couldn't even do a Google search. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
What is this thing? So understand, having some appreciation for some of that, and understand, okay, right, so it's not quite there yet, but it's improving. Come back in 3 months, right? Come back in 3 months again and see just how fast it's moving. It's going to be highly useful, and it's going to give us a lot of time back to do meaningful work, which, again, to me, that's the most meaningful part of all this, is how can I do more of what I'm really good at, what I'm really passionate about, and do less of the fluffy sort of stuff that, I don't enjoy, but I have to, right? And most people have to as well. Or make it so that you're thinking about things in different ways, and kind of looking at your own biases, differently. Point in case, there's a travel AI agent that I put together to help me figure out, okay, we're vacationing in Portugal in a few months for my wife's birthday, and help me figure out an itinerary. And having an AI agent that was using different kinds of tools, Google searches, as well as some more specialized travel broker sites that have all these kind of unique itineraries that they put together over the years as a big database, and then sort of crawling all of that and coming up with something unique based off of that, gave me something that, again, I never would have thought about. My own biases and my own way of thinking about what is a fun vacation. It really opened my eyes, yeah, this could be way more fun. Let's try that. And then, because it does have, LLMs and AI have the exact same biases as we do, as because of the training data that we gave it. But you can also more actively take that into account and sort of give you different results that is tweaking them with the awareness of your biases, with the awareness we're always doing things this specific way. Should we be thinking differently about this? And again, I think from a societal standpoint, it can help us with some of our biases and hiring and all other things, right? Oh, you know what? we're always doing things this way.
Mm.
Is that the best thing to do? What does the data show us, right? And let's improve on that. So again, I think that's where these agentic AI systems can help us and will give us some better outcomes when you're explicit, when you're saying, yes, we're aware of these things. Let's think about it a little bit differently. Let's measure these things and let's come up with another answer. And again, it's super early and it's evolving very, very quickly on a daily, if not weekly basis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a great way to end the discussion here, Andrei, and maybe just to highlight, definitely, even if it's not Jarvis yet, get familiarized with this technology because, as you said, it's changing so quickly, it's evolving so rapidly, and you don't want to be the person that the world is using smartphones and you're still kind of on the rotary phone, right? You don't want to be that person left behind. So. Thank you so much for coming on. Really insightful, really, I think important to understand the state of AI agents today. Maybe to cut through a lot of the hype that we're all experiencing, even as fun as it is. I'll have your website, Agent.ai, up on the show notes, your LinkedIn. Are there any other places that you're active and you want people to reach out or follow what you're up to?
That's it. And also you can find me on the Agent.ai community, community.agent.ai. And if you find yourself building agents, needing help, we're all there as well, the whole team, on helping you guide through building your first agent.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. You're a wealth of information. And maybe in 5 years, once the baby Jarvis is out, I'll have to have you back.
There we go.
And, we can talk about things a little bit further. Thanks again, Andrei.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.